You want to post it or me, bro? Intro that bitch. You need some content, son. You got no clips.
Welcome to another podcast. I have Carter again, and today we want to talk about strictly the mindset of being a TikTok seller. I was gonna say successful TikTok seller, but um,
You won't be a TikTok seller for long if you're not successful.
exactly, especially if you don't have the right mindset. Everybody talks about the mindset on the affiliate side, which is needed obviously because it's a creative game. At the end of the day, it's just perspective. I think same applies for the brand. And a lot of people don't talk about that.
A lot of people think about kind of the outcome instead of the inputs. People talk about doing inputs goals instead of output goals. But what is the thing that is really defining whether or not you take action? Every day you wake up, you know the things that you should do, especially towards the end of the night. I'm thinking about I should have done all these things today. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm making all these plans. Like tomorrow I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I'm setting up this schedule. These are the things that I used to do. Like set up. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this at 12, this at 1 o'clock, this at 8 a.m. I'm going to hit the gym at 6 a.m. And then you wake up at 9:30 and, and then you feel like you're behind in your schedule. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Right.
It's just the same cycle repeats, and the same thing goes for business, right? You're like, and you have to do something, but I'll put it off to tomorrow. I guess the first thing is just putting a deadline to stuff, right? Especially in the business game, since we're all kind of our own boss in a way, we don't have to.
Creating necessity.
Exactly.
Right. Because you do everything every day that you have to do, or you wouldn't. You know what I mean? You wouldn't be here.
And it's just a mindset type of thing, in my opinion, because you put those restrictions, or not restrictions, but you put those. I have to do this today, or I have to do this until next week, or it's just a deadline, in my opinion, right? Like I need to get new product images done. No, not in a rush. You put a deadline for today, it'll be done today, right?
And creating the necessity for it to actually be done. So I think a lot of people need, and especially I found out that I need someone else to like an accountability type of thing, right? So if I've been working in business by myself for so long, and I went through different phases where I did everything that was needed, but if I didn't create a necessity for it, it was never done. So if I didn't have something someone call me and they're like, hey, why are you not doing this? If you're doing everything by yourself, and a lot of times in business it's very hard to be self-motivated, and most people aren't inherently super self-motivated. I think we're obviously self-motivated enough to make it to where we are today, but to get where we need to go or want to go, those things need to change a little bit. And I think a lot of people are stuck kind of where they are because of the lack of necessity in certain things. Like if you needed to make $1 million this year, you've heard these examples, if you needed to make $1 million this year, or your family's going to die or something like that, you're probably going to make it. So they'll say oh, what's the chance that you make $1 million this year? Probably 1%, 0.1%, whatever it is. Okay, what if your parents are going to die if you don't? Much higher percentage. So creating the necessity for that thing creates the outcome.
Yeah. I like how you said having just someone put accountability partners, how I look at it, right? That's why networking is so huge, right? In my opinion, especially as a seller, not many people post anything. So just going out your way trying to network with people because you guys have similar goals at the end of the day. Make sales, right? Especially on TikTok Shop, just make sales, have good connections with the creators. And when it's just a one-man team, it's a little harder in my opinion, especially if you're not self-motivated.
And even if you are self-motivated, you're still going to see an increase in output when you have those things pushing you, right? So it's you can be self-motivated, and even if you are going to do $1 million in that year already, what could push you to 10?
Yeah.
What could push you to finding the path to 100? It's if you don't have these things that are pushing you, you're going to stop anyways once you hit that goal. If the goal is just to find some freedom, make $10,000, $20,000 a month, so you technically don't have to do anything. Most people completely fall off the wagon at that point, and then they don't have any longevity to it because that was the entire goal in the first place, and then they probably won't even continue making that too. They're going to fall below it. If their target is 20,000 and all they do is think about 20,000, then they hit 20,000 and then they scale back and then they're below 20,000, right? And then they're trying to get above water, right? So over 20,000 is drowning, or under 20,000 is drowning. Once they get up, they take a breath. They're like, oh, I'm good. I don't need to swim as much. And then they go right back under.
Exactly.
So it's if your goal, if you want to make 10, shoot for 20, 50, then those down months, you're still going to be making that money. even when it comes to working out, like all these different aspects of life, if you're always shooting to do the bare minimum, you're going to get less than the bare minimum because
That's how
there's
you
always
said,
bad days.
yeah, it's how you say it's just inputs versus outputs, just focusing on the inputs. And I think that's like the one thing a lot of people just overlook, right? Especially when you're, let's just say, a brand new brand, you're like, hey, I want to do like 100K next month. That's an output, right? It's not an input. Like, what's gonna get you there? You know, let's just say working with 10 creators one-on-one type of thing for my brand, or me making 100 videos, right, for my own brand. So it's just focusing on the inputs more than anything, and whatever outputs you get, I mean, don't really worry about them. Just focus on the inputs.
Yeah, and some of the outputs are videos posted, views generated, the amount of people that click on your product. Like, if you think about, okay, I want to sell a product. Okay, what has to happen for someone to sell, for you to sell a product? Someone needs to see your product. If you have 1% conversion rate, 100 people need to see it to get the one conversion at 1%, right? So just building it back up from that funnel, where most people just think about the bottom of the funnel, which is the end result goal of sales or of a certain outcome, and they're not thinking about the full top funnel of what actually is the input that drives said output.
Yeah, and I feel like also a lot of people just focus on such goals that are, let's just say, 5 steps ahead rather than 1 step ahead, right? Let's just say you're a brand new brand, you're like, hey, I want to do 100K next month. Hit 10K first, right? You need to hit 10K to touch 100, and you need to hit 50K to touch 100, right? So it's like you're missing roadblocks in a way, in my opinion.
And it's so much easier to hit 100 once you hit 10, right?
Exactly.
So it's like all you need to do is get 1, get 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000, 5,000. You know.
Like 0 to 100 looks scary, but 0 to 10, you're like, okay. But still, 0 to 10 growth is way more than 10 to 100.
Mm-hmm.
You get me? Because
Yeah.
you're coming from 0.
Yep. Even if you're coming from 1 to 10,000, you know, that's 10,000x.
Yeah.
Right? 10,000x on 10,000 is insanity, right?
Yeah.
A lot of zeros. 10 million?
I was gonna guess 10 million, but I don't want to be wrong.
1,000 times 1,000 is a million. 10,000
Yeah, it
times
should be.
10,000, probably 100 million. Whatever. Math. But thinking about those inputs instead of thinking about the outputs is the more effective way to think about it.
Yeah.
I think when people think about being successful or something like that, they're thinking about the outcome. They're not thinking about, and they see it. They see the outcome. They see what other people are doing. They see where they're at. They see famous people, rich people, people that are super athletic, whatever it is. They see that outcome. They don't see the inputs that they put in and the years and years and years that they put into it, because very little amount of people actually document anything, especially in the beginning.
Exactly.
I mean, and all the people that do and then become successful, they're like huge because they have this backlog. You can literally look back at Iman or whatever it is when he was posting when he was 15 all the way up until now, you know, and eventually, you know, he's going to go from literally documenting his life starting from 0 all the way to $1 billion. Like, think about that, like the content, like backlog.
And that's huge, but I still think it just discourages so like the people with the wrong mindset in my head, right? Because let's just say someone wasn't recording from 0 and they just popped out and they're a billionaire. You're like, okay, they probably got lucky and stuff like that. It's just luck. Versus someone who documented they're away from 0 to, let's just say, a bill. Now the people are gonna be like, yo, I didn't document, so like I can't get there. You know, so it's just double-edged sword in my opinion, because it's just your perspective of things, you know, in my opinion.
It kind of comes down to mentality too, because okay, I didn't start in the beginning. What? Like what? Like are you just gonna stop?
Exactly.
Like I didn't make it to $1 billion at 20 years old. Whole life's cooked.
Exactly.
Like what are you gonna do the rest of your life? You know what I mean? Like, and those same people that did become successful, they just continued doing it until they were successful. You know what I mean? They didn't know how long it was gonna take. You're looking at someone else, they're like, okay, they were doing it for 10 years. Oh, it's gonna take me 10 years. Like, wow, I'm gonna be 45 by then, or 30, or whatever it is, or 25, depending on your age, obviously. It's like, okay, what else are you gonna do? What are you gonna do for the next 10? It's like, oh, it's gonna take 10 years. What are you doing for the next 10 years?
Like, they're gonna pass by.
The years are passing, you know? The years will happen, the days will happen. Where, like, do you want to be in the same position where 35? Much worse position.
Yeah.
You know? But instead they'll sit there and, you know, I'm not lucky. It's not for me.
The more I think about it, is like, this is just advice for just entrepreneurs, right? Obviously, I feel like, at least me, I was thinking about it's just advice for TikTok shop brand owners that just help them out just for like the struggles we've been having. But this just applies for just business in general, in my opinion, right?
Hmm. The more connected you are to the highs, the more you feel the lows. I think I tried to like put the pain of like things going bad so ahead and so front of mind that when they actually do go bad or something like that, like I'm unfazed by it. It also makes me a little bit unfazed with the highs because I know that the more I'm connected to the highs, the harder the lows are going to even hit.
Yeah.
So it's like just staying consistent kind of in the middle or even below mentally, um, and not getting as caught up in it, which it's much easier. I mean, not everyone's going to like that because they're so addicted to the highs.
Yeah.
They love to feel the highs, so they're always chasing those highs, but those highs are just leading to the lows. Where if you just stayed consistent and you understood that even when things are going good, they're going to get worse at times, and even when it's bad, it's going to get better. It's like if this is the worst time of your life, it's like, what is it going to get worse? It's already worse. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So there's only one direction to go. And the same point when you're on highs, you're very likely going to have lows in the future because nothing sustains for a long period of time. And even if it does, you only feel acceleration or deceleration. You don't feel things when they're constant.
Yeah.
You don't even realize anything's happening. Like you're driving in a car, you don't feel anything except for the acceleration or deceleration. Everything else is just constant. You could be going 1,000 miles per hour or 1 miles per hour. It all feels the same until the change.
Yeah, just focusing on those inputs, just doing the same, whether you're having a good month or a bad month, just keep on doing the same shit that that's needed, right? Because in my opinion, I feel like we all know what's needed for our desired outcome, so we all know what the inputs we should be doing for desired outputs. And when you're not focused on the outputs more, then I just think you just have more success. It's like the perfect analogy that Alex Ramosio was saying. Whenever I see someone killing in another business, sometimes I'd be like, damn, I missed out. I should have done that. But like now, it's like, I know there's a shit ton of problems I don't know about. You're killing it, but I'm gonna just keep on doing what the fuck I'm doing. I feel like it applies the same way, right? You just keep on doing what you know you should be doing. Don't focus on like the outside world, in my opinion. Just keep on doing the same thing. Because what works for others maybe not work doesn't work for you, but you know what works for you. Or you're going to find out with doing the same inputs.
Copycats will never get to the place that the person that they're or the thing that they are copying, because copying somebody else is not how they got there in the first place.
I'm talking about just TikTok shop that applies perfectly, right? As a brand, you could copy another brand, but you're never going to be as successful as that brand.
You're guaranteed to be less successful if you copy them.
Exactly.
Guaranteed. You don't even have a chance. I mean, no iteration. I mean, you're not even coming in at the same time they are. You don't have the exact same advantages that they do.
They just have the speed advantage, right? They took action quicker. They didn't copy. Do you think there's a net negative with not being attached to the outcomes, right? Like you mentioned before, you don't feel the highs, so you don't feel the lows, which I think we agree on. We both had pretty decent highs, but didn't really affect us too much. And lows, everybody has those. And same way, didn't really affect us too much. Would you say there's any net negatives with that?
To not feeling the highs?
Yeah, and not feeling lows as well.
No. I think that it causes you to be in reality because when things are going bad, you think you're shit. And when things are going good, you think you're great. And you're wrong in both aspects, right? So it's like the closer you are to baseline, the closer you are to reality in any instance. And I think that everyone likes the highs. Not many people like the lows, but they don't realize how connected the two are.
Yeah.
They don't realize how intertwined leaning into the highs is to the lows. Because if you were not addicted to the highs, you would not feel the lows as much, right? And I think I even try to orient myself to hoping for the lows because I know how beneficial and how every time you hit those bottoms, the only way to go is up. And the more you can not be afraid of that low, you're able to make the correct decisions, right? So if something's working right now, but you realize that, you need to take a step back, you need to cut down your spending, you need to not be balling out, not be investing in certain things. When you make a realization in something, I think a lot of people realize and know what they need to do, but they're unwilling to take the step back in the moment and take away from that high to avoid that low because they're so addicted to that high. They don't want to step back to baseline because baseline feels like a low from the high. Most people aren't willing to do that. So it happens to them instead of them controlling it. And I think it becomes much easier in the low periods when you understand that you're in control. And obviously you're always in control, but by choosing to have that low earlier than you would have needed to or been forced to, it's a completely different mindset. And it's a completely different feeling when you are in control of that and in realization, and it feels much more aligned. It feels much more you doing than someone doing something to you. Because when something happens to you, it's a much different feeling.
Yeah.
Like when things start crashing down upon you and things are just failing, and they start not working, versus if you were the one that took that step back in realization, you are also much more far ahead, right? So if you choose, instead of running this thing out and like giving it a few months and be like, okay, we'll see what happens or whatever, when you already had the realization that this thing wasn't correct, you're able to get ahead of that and have a higher low, right? So all of those things will keep you closer to baseline instead of just bouncing from highs to lows. And it's actually going to increase that baseline over time as your experience and knowledge and actions continue to improve.
And lows obviously feel pretty bad, especially in like inventory-based business like we're in, just because when you're on the low, let's just say you're not selling, that's money you just got tied up. Compared to just say if you're an affiliate, if it's a low, you're just wasting time. Some people are fine with it. Some people have time to waste. When it's money, obviously people are more connected with the money than they are with time. So it sucks a lot more. I would like to think that when there's a low, your inputs got you there in my head. So always just looking at what specifically got me to this low and how could I, avoid that or fix it. And knowing that you're, like you said, you're in control. I don't like to believe that things happen to you as like you made things happen to you. Like you were in control. Because once it's back to what we were saying originally. Like it's all about mindset. If you think this is just bad luck, then
it is.
Then it is, yeah. And you're not in control, and you're pretty much fucked, yeah. Pretty much just in my head, yeah. That's why I always tell people when they're like, "Hey, I'm shadow banned" or something like that. Okay, you are. I'm not here to argue with you, right? If you believe so, then you believe, like that's your beliefs, but you're not in control, so you're not driving the wheel.
It creates its own placebo effect because you're looking for everything to tell you that thing that you believe, and if that thing you believe is negative, then you're going to see everything that aligns with that. And regardless of the truth or perceived truth,
Yeah.
one choosing to be optimistic about something, even delusional, because in the highs, you're delusional about, it's kind of almost like the stock market. Like everyone just thinks it's just going to keep going up, and they're delusional in the up, but also as things go bad, people are delusional the other way. They're thinking, oh, it's going to zero. Like everything's, the world's going to blow up. Like it's all the way up and down. So they're feeling the highs and the lows, and they're obviously okay with that. But I think I just don't want to feel the lows, so I choose not to align with the highs, take credit for them, and understand it's just a part of the process. But there's going to be peaks and troughs. And that makes me have a better average day-to-day thought process. Take better actions day to day. Those actions compound, increase the baseline.
Yeah, when you don't feel the lows so much, it helps because you're also just not being so emotional. As we've seen a lot of emotional people in business, and it's not a net positive. being so emotional,
Leads you to short-term actions.
which could lead to long-term results that aren't good for you and your business.
Most definitely. Everything compounds. Your daily negative actions compound. Your daily positive actions compound. Which one wins is whichever you do more. When you continuously do not do the things you know you should do, you lose confidence within yourself, of yourself. And I think other people can feel that. Other people can feel when you're not confident, because you don't even believe yourself. And I think that's why, think about it, that's why, like, people that are psychopaths or something like that, like, where they're just delusionally about themselves or narcissistic, they kind of get what they want in certain aspects.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's downsides to all of those things, but when you believe something to be true, usually is, at least in some way, much closer than the opposite.
I would say people believe that just in the wrong aspect, right? They believe they get said action or said result done without having to do said action. But when people actually do that action and get the result, they think it was because they believed. Right? It was the same thing with like action versus what's the word called? Like believing something's gonna come to you. I forgot what's the word. Action versus not believing.
Like faith?
Not faith. It's like
Believing something's going to come to you.
Manifestation. Manifestation versus action. It's in my tongue. But it's like that, right? In my head. A lot of people believe in something, so they're manifesting it. But when they do said action to get that result, they believe it was cause of manifestation, but it wasn't. It was cause of action. So it's just the inputs. It just goes back to the inputs versus outputs in my head. It is controllable. Right? When you start believing in things that you aren't in control of, then you pretty much already lost the game in my head. Because you're not driving the wheel.
Believing yourself to be out of control. Where could that lead to positively? Like understanding that you're out of control, that you're not in full control, versus believing that you have no control, are two very different things. Because to say that you have no control over the outcome is basically to say you're not there. Because everything has an effect.
To say that you have no control and to say that you have full control are both delusional, but they're both true.
The highs and lows.
Yeah. And this obviously all ties back into just business, because it's all just mindset in my head, kind of went deep philosophical, but I mean that's like the basis of just running a business in my head, because there's gonna be so many lows and so many highs. Can't get too attached to it, especially compared to just say a job. There's no such thing as lows, no such thing as highs in a job in my head.
When you're fired and hired.
I guess a low and a high.
Yeah.
A low when you get hired. But let's just say not as common as a business, right? You have a low and a high in the same exact day multiple times, right? And not being so attached to said outcome, I think, is huge. But it's hard. It's hard not to get excited, let's just say, when you make your first 10K. And it's hard not to be fucking sad when you lose your first 10K.
I feel as if it's not necessarily in your control to be excited or not excited, or to feel the low or feel the high. It's more of like a personal preference. So like I think you kind of have to go through it normally, unless you're just inherently that way. To like you feel the high and then you feel the low, and then you're like, oh, I don't want to feel that low.
Yeah.
So it's a personal decision. And the next time you are at that high, you have that realization that bad things will come,
Hmm.
good things will come at the low. So it's usually through experience, right? I mean, very few people I think have those realizations in the moment for the first time when they're having that feeling for the first time. But once you go through the ringer a few times, you got to be pretty dumb to not realize that like all things don't last. Good
Yeah.
things don't last. Bad things don't last.
I think feeling the highs and the lows and acting on the highs and the lows are like two different things, right? A lot of people act on it. They're on the highs, they act differently, and it gets them to the lows. They feel the lows, act differently, it gets them to the highs. Versus someone that is just feeling it, because at the end of the day, we're human. We're gonna feel the lows, we're gonna feel the highs. Now, acting on it is two different things.
Mm. Consistent actions regardless of the circumstances.
Exactly.
Foot on the gas full time. People will put their foot on the gas once they hit the bottom, but if you were to just be full speed ahead the entire time, obviously with moderation depending on the person, but most people step off the gas on the highs, like as they get to the highs, and it's like you wonder why you slowed down. It's like you were literally stepping off the gas. Then things go down, you start stepping on the gas, and you're like boom bop, boom bop, boom
Exactly.
bop. So it's like you're in control of it. And the more that you have realizations that you're in control, the more you can take actions to control those things.
It's like a graph. Like this is the baseline, it's just going up and down when you're acting on them. Versus, let's just say, comparable to the stock market, it's always gonna go up long term, but there's always lows and there's always highs. But overall, you're gonna be up if you're not acting on the highs and the lows.
Looking at daily results versus all time, when you're feeling good about something, zoom out. When you're feeling bad about something, zoom out. Both will reorientate you to reality and to truth and to how things truly are. And the farther you zoom out, the more consistent you see. You see that it's not really that low, it's not really that high. It's just another fluctuation.
Not comparing yourself, I would say, is huge as well.
Mm.
Their life is not your reality. And it's easy to compare yourself when someone's doing worse than you, but it's hard when someone's doing better than you.
Both ways, You look at that comparison game feeds into the highs and lows. You're comparing yourself to people that are doing better than you. You're comparing yourself to people that are doing worse than you. You feel better than the people doing worse than you. You feel worse than the people doing better than you. The feeling is not inherently helpful. And I think the more that you focus on things that are not helpful, they obviously will not help. Right? People know that things are not helpful, but they'll continue to do them, and then they'll question why it's not working. It's like you already knew it wasn't going to work. You knew it. You know it now. But there's a gap in understanding or desire.
It's interesting how the human mind works, right? I would say we all want to, let's just say, be free, quote unquote. Most people are fine with 5, 10K a month profit in their pocket, but self sabotage is huge, especially in the business game, I'd say. When you're trying to start your own thing, a lot of people self sabotage themselves without knowing it, and they consistently do it.
Everything's self-sabotage is what I choose to believe, because I want to believe that I am in control of the outcome, and at least in control of my own state of mind. Because if you're not in control of your own state of mind, who is? And who has your best intentions other than yourself? because you can even think about, say, your parents or loved ones and stuff like that, and obviously they want good for you, but they're also taking into account what they feel and what they think, right? They're not necessarily looking at it from an outward perspective of what is truly the best for you. And sometimes the best thing for you is to go through the lows, do the things that they told you not to do because they went through the experiences and learned not to do them, but you haven't learned how not to do them, right? They're expecting you to learn from the things that they've done when they never learned from the things that their parents told them not to do, but that they had to go through and learn not to do them. So it's an interesting thing because they went through the same process of their parents telling them not to do it, and now they're telling their kids not to do it. And they did it when their parents told them not to do it, and now they expect you to have a different result. It's just not very introspective, I think, and can lead to a lot of conflict within families. I think that is unnecessary, and unnecessary conflict is unnecessary.
The best teacher is experience. Going through it, going through the lows, going through the highs, feeling everything.
I think most people are fine with feeling the lows by their actions,
Yeah.
because they're fine with it as long as they can feel the highs, right? And that's fine. I think it's an individual's choice whether or not they want to feel that. And I think that most people choose to by their actions. They might not realize it. I think that's the biggest thing, where as long as if someone does not realize the situation that they are in and the game that they are in, they can't really make a different choice in that situation. But I think through that experience, they find realization normally.
A lot of people are delusional, not in the helpful way.
Once you learn something, you'll look back and be like, oh, why didn't I listen to these people? Why didn't I whatever? And it's like, because you couldn't. You did not have the unique pain that you now have from said actions that they told you not to do.
Just experience, and you don't have to go through it yourself, but just from other people's experience is huge as well. But for example, let's just say that evil good stuff. If someone told me, hey, you could do this, but you could get banned, in my head I'm like, okay, there's a small possibility. I think it's worth the risk. Versus someone saying like, hey, I did this and I got banned. I'm like, okay, you actually did it. You got banned yourself. I don't want to I think that risk is greater now, just because you actually went through it. But maybe the risk is the same. But it's just actual experience, I think, is huge. And that doesn't mean that you have to go through it, right? You can learn through other people's experience.
So you can. I guess what would be the difference between
them telling you?
Maybe like the true, like, if your parents went to jail for something or someone died from something, I mean, like, society has learned like what mushrooms and stuff to eat and like what plants not to eat and berries and stuff like that through people literally dying or getting sick from said things, right?
I would say it's factually true.
You don't question it or think that I won't do that. You know what I mean? Like, someone say not to do it because blah blah blah. It's like, oh well, I'm better than that person. Or you think yourself as superior. I think normally, in teenage years and stuff like that, early 20s, you feel superior to others, and obviously that's as delusional as thinking that you're worse than others. So it's just that side of delusion.
Shit's rough. Shit's rough being a business owner. Yeah.
I think it's great.
I love it. Obviously, I love the lows. I come to peace with the lows. I enjoy it. Makes me push a little harder. Step on the gas a little more. Break the gas pedal.
Break the gas pedal. No brakes.
But yeah, I come to enjoy them because I know like the highs are gonna come eventually. But just keep on doing the same thing, Keep on rowing the boat.
Yeah, once you know the right things to do, obviously people can get stuck in things that are not working, continue not to work. They can continue to do them and question why they're not working, which is, dare I say, retarded, but it's not being introspective. I mean, if every day, they say improve 1% a day or whatever it is, and I think anyone that is introspective and is being, the more delusional you are, the less like entwined with reality, and your decision making is going to be skewed because you're either delusionally optimistic, delusionally pessimistic. Being delusional leads to you taking the wrong actions, and the actions that are not going to lead to the thing that you say that you want.
Yeah. That shit got deep quick. Not really deep, I guess, but it's more really taking off the layers of bigger mind.
I forget that people don't do it.
Yeah.
As somebody that does it inherently, not necessarily taught to do it, because I think even when if you seek to teach someone something like this, it can't work because it has to be a individual's choice, you know, of how they want to think about something. And I think most people just don't have the realizations. Maybe they don't have those lows. So I think a lot of people that like have the lows, those are the people with like, because highs aren't really experience. You know what I mean? Having a great time, like those are experiences, but those aren't necessarily teaching moments.
Yeah.
Right? You learn through the bad experiences, which is why I think I try to look forward to them, because I know that I'll come out stronger from it versus everyone's chasing the highs and going for the highs mentally without realizing that there's much less learning. You know, you might learn that, oh, making a bunch of money isn't everything. So like rich people will sit there and tell broke people or poor people or people that are struggling, oh, having money isn't everything. It's like, it's literally everything right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, focus on your family. It's like, well, it's really hard when like you're literally struggling, or like you can't spend time with your family because you literally have to go work and you're pulling all-nighters and you're working a bunch. So money is truly their problem, and their mindset, of course, because you can have a good time in a bad situation, and I think that's a personal choice, which I don't think people necessarily broadly agree with that. But I think if you do, then there's a possibility that you won't necessarily feel it as much.
You're just asking yourself why for everything. Things are going good, why? If things are going bad, why? Something didn't work out, why? A lot of people don't ask themselves why.
They teach you not to ask why. And I think a lot of the classes in school, I'd be up at the front of the classroom because I'd be asking too many questions or something, or, you know, goofing off a little bit as well. But like, it's interesting the effect of like asking teachers and stuff like that a lot of questions and asking them why. And obviously it can be annoying when you're just trying to get through the day and teach some kids, like, you know, not everyone wants to be sitting there with kids and whatever it is, but obviously you made that choice to do it. So I think you're in a position to help and help to show kind of the way things are and give insight and pour into the kids and stuff like that. I know some of the best teachers I had were the ones that were able to answer the questions, right? Regardless of, you know, I wasn't asking the dumbest questions, but, you know, they probably weren't the most pertaining to said lesson, but rather they're, you know, just a question. And I think questions from one can help another because not everyone knows how to maybe articulate the question. Or I like to listen to people ask other people questions because it gets my mind rolling and thinking about the perspective. And you can't always come up with the best question because kind of like the Guardian, it's not the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's some movie, but basically they had a big supercomputer that like, they were like, what's the answer to the universe or whatever? And they said 42 after, you know, tons of years or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, it's truly about the question, right? Because if you can ask the right question, say nowadays with ChatGPT and stuff like that, if you're able to ask the right question, you can get the answer you're looking for. But if you're not able to prompt another person, prompt AI, you're not going to be capable of finding the answer that you're looking for if you're not able to articulate the question that you truly have. The ability to ask questions is quite profound.
Always ask. Never stay silent, especially within yourself.
Mm.
Good mindset. Hopefully, this helps one of you keep on pushing because obviously there's a lot of people out there that aren't having the greatest success yet, and probably blaming external things rather than internal things. But it's all self-doing. You know, you have the power to flip things around, and you have the power to also flip things around the other way, right? So everything's in your control. Don't ever think it's not. We want to do this because mindset's huge, and a lot of people don't obviously mention about the brand side because everybody just talks about it as an affiliate specifically for TikTok because there's a lot of things out of your control. But I don't like to say that just because you put that in their mind. Now they're saying, okay, if something goes bad, it's not my fault. Everything's your fault. If you're doing good, it's your fault. If you're doing bad, it's your fault. Keep it simple as that.
People usually fall into one camp where they either, when things are going well, they either blame themselves. Typically, when things are going well, people are like, "Oh, things are just going well," and then when things are going bad, they're like, "Oh, it's my fault." It's like they don't see how correlated the two are,
Yeah,
right? So if it's your fault that it's going bad, it's just as much your fault when it's going well. Keep it pushing.
you're in control on both sides, so you can flip things around.
Stay in control. Choose to be in control. Keep it pushing.
Keep it crushing. Launch some fucking brands or keep killing in whatever business you're in. But see you guys on the next one.